the regular meeting of the Council of the Town of Oliver on July 27th, 2020 to order, and ask the CAO if there are any late items.
We have no late items, thank you.
Thank you. Then I'm looking for a motion for adoption of the agenda. So moved. Second. Thank you. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. Item D, Rising Report of the July 27th, 2020, today's closed meeting. Council authorized the installation of a 6-panel pole-mounted solar system at the Oliver and District Museum, and this item was addressed in the closed meeting as the donor had requested to remain anonymous. Item E, adoption of prior minutes. Adoption of the July 13th, 2020 regular open council meeting minutes. Can I get a motion to adopt? Moved. Second. Thank you. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. Item F, Water Matters, 2020 Water Budget Update, and I'll pass it over to the CAO.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This report is in front of Council for an update for the 2020-2024 financial plan for the first part of the year. At the June 30th as of June 30th, water capital had expenditures of $4,448,000 or 22% of the 2020 budget. Many of the projects listed within this report will be commencing in Q3 or Q4. Earlier in the year, Council did approve a resolution to increase the water capital budget for repairs at the Flume 3 in the amount of $51,000. The change is reflected in the approved budget amounts. In February, Council did adopt the financial plan, and due to the budget being adopted in late January and COVID pandemic, the first quarter results were not presented. And in this report is the results of the operating budgets up to June 30th, 2020. And they are basically in line to be within budget by the end of the year. So this report is in front of Council to be received for information. If there's any questions, I may try to answer them.
Thank you, CAO. Any questions, Council? Councilor Mattis?
Thanks, Your Worship. I don't expect an answer to the question, but I would like follow-up from staff if I could. I'm a little concerned when I look at the water fund revenues. That, you know, this is the end of June. We're halfway through the year. We're at 34% of revenue. And I just wanted to see if that's consistent with previous years. Go ahead.
Thank you, Your Worship. It is, we haven't billed for the irrigation as of yet. That doesn't get billed until August. We collect on the irrigation in August. So there's that, the flat rate will be coming in. It's an annual bill as opposed to the quarterly bills that are for the other utility.
Now that would fall in the flat rate category?
Yes.
I'm still a little concerned with the metered category, which is the larger of the two, at 36%.
The second,
halfway through the year.
second quarter has just been billed and it will be coming in. It's coming in as we speak.
Okay, so this isn't actually until the end of June. I
Well,
guess.
it is till the end of June.
It is, but it isn't. Yeah, I understand. Thanks for the clarification.
You're welcome.
Any further questions? I'm looking for a motion to receive the report. Moved. Second. Councillor Sidhu. Any further discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. Item F2, report, Councillor Machel's not here, so F3, Councillor Sidhu, anything to report?
Nothing to report, Your Worship.
Thank you. Moving to item G, bylaws. Zoning Amendment Bylaw 1380.15, 380 and 389 Chardonnay Avenue, and I will refer to the Director of Development Services.
Thank you, Your Worship. Please get the PowerPoint up front there. Thank you, Diane. So this application is Zoning Amendment Bylaw 1380.15 for 380 and 389 Chardonnay Avenue.
Sorry.
All right. Thank you. So the purpose of this application, the applicants are seeking to amend the zoning of 380 and 389 Chardonnay Avenue, which is legally known as lots 15 and 17, District Lot 2450S, SDYD Plan KAP 79057. And they're proposing to rezone it from RH1, residential high density 1, to RS1, residential low density 1, to facilitate a two-lot subdivision in which single-family dwellings will be constructed on each of the two new subject properties. There'll be 4 total properties, so it'll be going from 2 to 4. Thank you. Property location map. There you can see Chardonnay Avenue. It's on the far east end of Chardonnay Avenue where it meets Mountain View. And the 2 properties there are subject to this proposal. Previously, at the end of last year, 312 Chardonnay went through a similar application, and then also 313 Chardonnay. So this is the last 2 of those 4 that were zoned for multifamily that are being rezoned back down to single family. 2017 ortho show them their vacant lots. The zoning is RH1 as mentioned, and the OCP is LR, low density residential. Some photos of the subject property. The photo on the left shows the view, the street view from Chardonnay. These are photos of 380 Chardonnay Avenue. And on the right is the street view as well from Mountain View Drive. And this is a street view from Chardonnay Place. And then photos of 389 Chardonnay Avenue. On the left is the street view. And on the right is also the street view. Same thing with the next 2 photos there, as you can see. Proposal, the applicant's proposing to rezone the 2 subject properties from RH1 to RS1 in order to facilitate a 2-lot subdivision on each lot. The applicant's proposing to construct a single-family dwelling on each of the 4 lots. Since the proposed use and minimum lot sizes do not meet the requirements in the RH1 zone, a rezoning to RS1 is required. In the 2 sketch plans, so 380 Chardonnay Avenue, you see there's 2 lots there. They're approximately 650 square meters each, which is more conducive to the RS1 zoning. The other lots were rezoned to, one of them was rezoned 312 to RS4 because the lots were smaller. And the one 313 was RS2. And this RS1 was the best fit for this zone because of just the sheer size of them. They could accommodate buildings with a 1.5 inch rear yard setbacks rather than the 1.2, which is in the RS4 zones and RS2 zones. So RS1 was the best zone to go to in this case. And you'll see the sketch plan for 389 Chardonnay Avenue. It's split in half basically, with the driveways will be from Chardonnay Avenue. The neighboring lot sizes, it's hard to see in this image. You can actually see the size of the lots, but these lots will be, as mentioned, slightly bigger than the neighboring lots. Some of the OCP guidelines that apply to this. The OCP is LR, which supports the proposed rezoning. Staff consider the zoning amendment to allow for the proposed subdivision and construction of 4 new single-family homes. Represents best use of the land for the following reasons. The proposal is consistent with the OCP. It'll convert 2 underutilized lots into 4 new single-family homes in a desirable area. And the proximity to the hike and bike trail and Tuckamilk Lake could encourage more forms of active transportation. So staff consider that the building envelope shown on the preliminary sketch plans are adequate and have no concerns that a sizable dwelling can be constructed on these lots in the future without any variances to town bylaws. Now, the waiving of the public hearing, section 464(2) of the Local Government Act states that a local government may waive the holding of a public hearing on a proposed zoning bylaw if an OCP plan is in effect and the bylaw is consistent with the OCP. So in this case, the proposed zoning is consistent with the LR designation of the OCP. So on November 25th, 2019, Council adopted Zoning Amendment Bylaw 138011, which rezoned 312 Chardonnay from RH1 to RS4. At the public hearing, which was held on November 12th, 2019, the neighbors were given ample opportunity to speak to the proposed bylaws, with limited to no opposition voiced. The neighborhood has also previously petitioned council about the concerns associated with multifamily lots in this area and the desire for them to be rezoned back to single family. On June 8, 2020, council adopted Zoning Amendment Bylaw 138014, which rezoned 313 Chardonnay to RS2 to allow for a 2-lot single-family subdivision. As part of this application, council waived the public hearing because the proposal was in line with the OCP and because the public had ample opportunity to speak to the matter of the rezoning of multifamily lots in the neighborhood to single family. So with that, the option is that council may choose to support the staff recommendation, they may choose to deny it, they may choose to give Zoning Amendment Bylaw 138015 first and second reading and proceed to a public hearing to be held on August 24th, 2020, or they may choose to refer back to staff for additional information. And with that, the staff recommendation is that Zoning Amendment Bylaw 138015 be read a first and second time and proceed to the August 24th, 2020 regular council meeting for third reading, and that the holding of the public hearing be waived in accordance with section 464(2) of the Local Government Act, and that council give notice of the waiving of the public hearing in accordance with the requirements of the Local Government Act. Thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you, Director. Any questions or comments, Council?
I can move the recommendation then, that zoning amendment bylaw 1380.15 be read a first and second time and proceed to the August 24th, 2020 regular council meeting for third reading, and that the holding of the public hearing be waived in accordance with section 464(2) of the Local Government Act, and that staff give notice of the waiving of the public hearing in accordance with the requirements of the Local Government Act.
I'll second.
Any discussion? I just had a comment of my own that I don't have any issue with the rezoning, but I'm worried about building a habit of waiving public hearings. I understand the logic behind doing it at this point, and there's challenges presented by COVID, but since that's likely to be the norm for some time, I think maybe we need to look at perhaps a different public hearing process for the future. Comment? All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Item G2, Sign Regulation Amendment Bylaw 918.02, and I'll turn it back over to the Director of Development Services.
Thank you, Your Worship. Sign Regulation Amendment Bylaw 918.2 is before council for adoption. At the previous council meeting, council gave first, second, and third reading to an amended sign bylaw, which includes provisions for wine barrel signage, bed and breakfast operations, and vacation rentals, as well as several other housekeeping amendments. Thank you.
Thank you, Director. Any questions or comments from council?
I'll move adoption of bylaw 918.02.
Councilor Schwartzberger, second. Councilor Dennis. Any further discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Moving on to H, Business, H1, Grow Oliver Coordinator, .15 position, and I will turn it over to the CAO.
Thank you, Your Worship. The report before you is to provide additional information with respect to the mandated budgeting funds available for the Grow Oliver Coordinator. Council directed that an application be submitted to the Rural Dividend Fund Program in 2018 for the development of an actionable economic development plan, which was identified in the 2017 Downtown Action Plan. The Grow Oliver Plan was adopted by Council on the recommendation of the Downtown Advisory Committee, and one of the quick start actions was to have a dedicated Grow Oliver Coordinator. This was identified as a dedicated part-time .0.15 person to carry out and support Grow Oliver actions, and the South Okanagan Chamber of Commerce was identified for supporting this position. The budget required to support a part-time coordinator position would be approximately $6,750. That's 270 hours at $25 an hour. Presently, there is $8,000 of non-committed funds in the business and promotion budget that could be used to fund this position. The Grow Oliver project has a surplus of $3,000, which could be used this year in support of the Grow Oliver coordinator position. In the future, consideration could be given to funding the position through the business licensing fees. Council also requested information on the mandate of the Grow Oliver coordinator. As identified in the strategy 1B of the Grow Oliver plan, the Grow Oliver coordinator will carry out and support Grow Oliver action tasks as directed by the committee and as required by the Grow Oliver economic development strategy. The coordinator will liaison with local economic development stakeholders and work with external partners on specific Grow Oliver actions, along with broader local economic development projects and initiatives as they arise. Their work will include grant writing, sourcing additional funds, supporting volunteer coordination activities for community events So, should council proceed with having a Grow Oliver coordinator, action within the Grow Oliver plan will begin to be implemented and will assist in strengthening and growing Oliver's economy. The coordinator will bring the economic development expertise that is required to implement the actions identified in the plan. And as I indicated before, the costs associated with this would be $6,750 annually. And the cost to implement the coordinator position for the remainder of 2020, which is 5 months, is $2,812.50, which would be covered through the funds remaining in the Grow Oliver project. There are 3 options for council. Council can use the remaining funds from the Grow Oliver project to fund the Grow Oliver coordinator for the remainder of 2020 and direct staff to begin discussions with the South Okanagan Chamber of Commerce with respect to the Grow Oliver coordinator position. And the Grow Oliver coordinator position could be included in the 2021 budget for council's consideration. You can refer it back to staff for additional information, and council can provide additional direction with respect to the Grow Oliver coordinator. The recommendation of staff is option number 1, which is that council use the remaining funds from the Grow Oliver project to fund the Grow Oliver coordinator position for the remainder of 2020, and that you direct staff to begin discussions with South Okanagan Chamber of Commerce, and that the Grow Oliver coordinator position be included in the 2021 budget for council's consideration.
Thank you, CAO. Any questions or comments? Councillor Mattis?
Thank you, Your Worship. I would support doing it till the end of this year, and certainly that staff continue or begin discussions with the South Okanagan Chamber of Commerce with respect to continuing the position in following years. But I'm not sure that at this point I'm prepared to support putting it in next year's budget until we conclude those discussions. Like, we should discuss with the Chamber of Commerce how it's going to be funded, what our portion would be, and then that would come back to council and we would look at putting that into our budget, rather than just saying outright now, put it in the budget. So I would be more than happy to support the first two tenets of this proposed motion, but not the third. I don't think that should be put in the budget until the completion of the second one.
Councillor Ventura?
So personally, I support the recommendation the way that it's written, and we'll move the recommendation. I can move it now or after I say what I want to say. But I think that the suggestion here that the Grow Oliver coordinator position be included in the 2021 budget for council's consideration means that we will still be considering the position at budget time. It's not foregone conclusion that it will pass the budget process for next year. So I think the fact that we would have somebody in place as soon as possible, take advantage of the momentum that's been built with this plan, and with it just being basically accepted within the last couple of weeks or the last month or so, we'll be able to see how having a coordinator helps with some of the quick action implementation items over the next couple of months, and then we will have, I believe we will have an opportunity at budget time to consider whether we want to continue funding that position for the following year. So I would move the recommendation.
Thank you, Councillor Ventura. The mover, do I have a seconder?
I'm going to second it so we can continue discussion, and I have a couple of points when you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, obviously the money's there to fund the coordinator for the balance of this year, so I have no problem with that. I'm a little unsure about hiring somebody and then we get to budget season and we say, no, things are tight, we didn't get our funds, we didn't get as many funds as we thought because of COVID. We got a 9% tax increase coming again for policing, and so to hire somebody for 5 months and then not continue would, in my mind, be problematic. On the other hand, I'm sure a .15 coordinator is basically going to be off the corner of somebody's desk who already has other employment. I don't see that this is going to be their only employment, that somebody makes $6,000 a year for. So theoretically, they're going to be doing other things as well. Might I ask the CAO or the corporate officer, the report mentions that possible future funding through business licensing. Where does the business licensing funds go now?
Thanks, you.
Thank you, Your Worship. With respect to the funds, they used to go to OTA until we've transferred that all over to the regional district. That's how the OTA is now being funded. So that has been used, this year it was used to balance the budget. We didn't have to do an increase with regards to, those funds were used to balance the budget this year.
So they basically just go into general funds.
Yeah.
So I can, that seems fine, and I'm okay with going into budget. As Councillor Ventimiglia said, we can always turn it down. I'd hate to see that, because somebody just gets their feet wet 5 months in, and then for other reasons, we have to say no, but it's a little bit of a tough one for me.
Councillor Adams?
Thank you, Your Worship. I would, now that I understand the funding and that we're only, the balance of the year is the 2,800, that's outstanding. I would even go as far as saying we should up the ante from some of the $5,000 in the economic development budget that we are unlikely to spend this year. Move it up to a 0.3 position, and let's really see what can be done, with the funds, so that when it comes to budget time next year, that we actually can say, well, yes, it's worthwhile, or no, it's not worthwhile. I'm not sure that 0.15 will get us very far. But I go back to, I'm willing to do that, but I don't think it should automatically go into the budget. That we should have a review, and also that the discussion with the chamber for long-term funding, because we should be a partner in this. We shouldn't be the sole funder. And until those discussions are finished to determine how much the chamber is going to kick into the party, so to speak, that I don't think we should be committing ourselves to next year's budget. I think let's see what we can get for the balance of the year, and let's see what the Chamber of Commerce will bring to the table before we make the next level of commitment. Even though we can turn down that next level of commitment second time around, I think that we need to get the parties to the table before we say yes, we will.
Thank you, Councillor Mattis. So we do have another motion on the table. I don't know if there's further discussion of what Councillor Mattis has proposed. In my opinion, including it in the 2021 budget is fine. We haven't attached a budget to that, and it's going to come back to us either way, so it's not saying yay or nay.
If it's in the budget, there'll be a number.
Yes, there's not one right now, though, so we're not committing ourselves to a specific number at this point. Councillor Mattis?
So I have a question for staff. Councillor Mattis suggested that there is extra money in the Economic Development Fund that hasn't been used and most likely will not be used before the end of the year. Is it a possibility to fund that position at a 0.3, for example, for the remainder of this year, but include it in next year's budget for the purposes of discussion at a 0.15 as originally suggested?
Yes.
So if so, then I would be happy to make an amendment to the motion or accept a friendly amendment, or however that all plays out.
Is it too late to do that? Do we need to defeat this motion, or can we amend it?
You could put this one forward and then put a new motion forward saying that for this year you would like it to be at 0.3 for the 5 months.
And that actually, looking at the motion as it is, there's no 0.15 even in the motion.
It's easier.
Councillor Schwartzberg?
It doesn't actually say that.
Yeah. Again, I think that moving it up to a 0.3 is, in my opinion, not a great idea, because then we're going to try and, when we go to fund it, 2021, are we funding 0.15, are we funding 0.3? You know, the director of finance told us at a previous meeting that our revenues were down because of COVID, so money not spent goes into helping us get through the year. I don't think we should, I mean, the 3,000's there from the project is left over from the project that made the Grow Oliver document, so I'm happy to spend that on a coordinator for this year and have the budget discussion next year, but I don't think it's a great idea to move it up to a 0.3 particularly.
Councillor Mathis?
Thank you, Your Worship. I would have a question through the staff on the basis of this. Council direct staff to begin discussions. What are we discussing with the South Okanagan Chamber of Commerce?
We're discussing to speak with them with regards to taking on the work that the coordinator work is what we're looking at, to have their administrator undertake this work for us.
So there's no discussion of long-term funding on
No.
their behalf?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay, thank you.
So this motion as it was, the intent was as a 0.15 position, but that's not written in the motion.
It says use the remaining funds, there's only enough funds
Okay.
to do a
All right.
0.15.
We would have to dip into the, sorry, we would
That's
have to dip into the
Right.
economic development funds if we were to do anything more than that.
Okay, so on this motion as it is there any further discussion? I'll ask all in favor? Opposed? I'm also in favor, so the motion carries.
Could I ask that you speak into your mic as well, please?
Me?
Everyone, yes,
Oh,
please.
sorry. Is there any further discussion on the matter, though? Do I want to propose a second motion? Tossing that idea around. Okay. Thank you. Then moving on to item H2, 2020 Tax Sale Deferment, and I will pass it over to the CAO.
Thank you. I'm going to be talking a lot tonight. Okay, this is to provide council with some background and deferral options regarding the upcoming 2020 tax sale as part of the town's COVID-19 relief strategy. Staff have analyzed the 13 folios on the delinquent list as of July 20th, 2020. Out of the 13 folios, 8 folios were on our pending tax sale list in 2019. In 2019, staff managed to collect all delinquent taxes outstanding before the last Monday in September and avoided the tax sale altogether. Staff feel that if the town defers its tax sale an additional year, it will further put these folios into delinquency and they may be unable to dig themselves out. We also recognize there is a 1-year redemption period if the property ends up going into tax sale, which is an additional year the owners are able to redeem the property. At the community charter, the local government act require an annual property tax sale to be held on the last Monday of September, involving any properties that have 3 years of unpaid property taxes. The process starts with staff notifying these property owners in August that due to having 3 years worth of unpaid property taxes, their property is subject to tax sale. The property owners are then given until the morning before the tax sale to pay the delinquent taxes owing in order to avoid having their property sold. Due to COVID-19, the province of BC issued Ministerial Order number M159, which provided municipalities with some abilities to assist taxpayers who may be facing financial difficulties as a result of the pandemic. One of the options for the municipalities by way of a bylaw is to defer the 2020 tax sale until September 27th, 2021. The order does stipulate that written notice must be sent within 2 weeks of the bylaw's adoption, advising the property owner that the tax sale has been deferred to September 27, 2021, and that applicable interest, currently is 5.45%, choose to defer the tax sale process for 1 year and direct staff to prepare the necessary bylaw. The recommendation before council is that council chooses to keep the tax sale process unchanged and scheduled for September 28th, 2020.
Thank you, CAO. Councillor Manis?
Thank you, Your Worship. Through to the CAO, I just wanted to clarify what I thought that I heard there, is that any that would come up on the tax sale this year would have been delinquent for this would be their third year that they're delinquent. So really, any that come up this year would not be a result of COVID. It's been 3 years. Similarly, if there are any that are delinquent this year as a result of COVID, they wouldn't come up for 2 more years, which would give them time.
That's correct.
Okay.
Councillor Schwarzenegger?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Through to the CAO. Again, from what I took when I read the report, if we do back it up 1 year, then the people who are delinquent would have another year to come up with the money before it actually went to tax sale. Is that correct? Sorry, you should be talking in there.
That's correct, but the tax sale is only someone that has been delinquent for 3 years.
Right.
So if they're going to be on there, they've been on there for 3 years already, and if we delay it another year, they're just going in a deeper hole, basically, because they've got 1 more year that they're not dealing with that.
Councillor Schwarzenegger?
Yeah, given that clarification, I would move the recommendation that council chooses to keep the tax sale process unchanged and scheduled for September 28th, 2020.
Second. Councillor Manis? Any further discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. Moving on to item H3, 2020 Financial Plan Update Operations, and back over to the CAO.
Thank you. This is to provide an update on the financial plan for operations. The operating results as of June 30th are consistent with the budget. There have been unexpected expenditures that have occurred due to the COVID-19, which are being offset throughout the year by savings of council and staff not attending any conferences or seminars. These sessions have all been moved to virtual or canceled. Revenues have remained consistent with budgets in all departments. The federal gas tax monies, $262,000, which will be included in the source of other general revenue, were received on July 14th and will be reflected in the third quarter review. So if there's any questions with respect to any of that, I'll attempt to answer.
Any questions, Council?
Looks pretty good.
Okay, then.
All looks
It's
good.
before council for information, to be received for information.
I'll move that we receive information.
Thank you.
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. Item H4, 2020 Financial Plan Update Capital. CAO.
Thank you, Your Worship. This is to provide an update on the 2020 capital budgets. And again, the results of the capital budget are up to June 30th. The source of funding for these projects are a combination of taxation, reserves, and grants. So there's a few highlighted here. The Packing House Lane project construction will not occur until later in the year or early 2021. IT server upgrades will commence in the third or fourth quarter. The water tender is expected to be under budget. Solar panels for the fire hall is proceeding in quarter 3. And we actually just awarded that contract the other day, I do believe. Yeah. And the bridge park is complete and the final building will be in the third quarter. Maintenance on the Fairview Bridge will commence in the third quarter. And the airport runway extension is awaiting grant approval. And the Batham Open upgrade is in the fourth quarter. The records management is over due to the fact that when it was budgeted, we did not take into consideration PST. So that's the overage on that particular budget at vehicle is over by a slight amount of $375, and I do believe that was some of the lighting fixtures, et cetera, that got put on. The capital updates for the sewer are presented also in this. The Sandy Dump contract has recently been signed and work will be commencing shortly. The blower and the aerator upgrades are ongoing and should be completed by the end of the year. Many of the other projects are for consulting related works for future capital works. We did receive from the airport, from the minister, or the province, they are amending the schedule that we have with regards to what can happen on the airport lands to allow for the Sandy Dump. So that was received very quickly from the province. They worked very quickly with us to allow us to have that approval. So if there's, the motion here is again to receive for information.
Thank you, Sidhu. Council, any questions?
I'll move receipt.
Second. Councilor Johnson, thank you. I just actually had one question myself. So we got feedback about the Sandy Dump at the airport from the province. Was there any feedback from the airport themselves?
No.
Thank you. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. Item H5, ducts within the municipality, and I will turn it over to the Director of Development Services.
Thank you, Worship. The purpose of this report is to provide Council with information in regards to the Animal Control Bylaw amendments required to permit ducts within the municipality, as per request by a property owner. So Section 15 states, Section 15 of the Animal Control Bylaw states that no person shall own or harbor any animal that is not listed in column 1 of Schedule C below. So this is dogs, cats, fish, certain types of birds, gerbils, hamsters, amphibians, and reptiles, and chickens. As the table shows, chickens are the only type of fowl that are permitted. Ducks are not included in this list and are hereby prohibited. A request has been received from a property owner to allow domestic ducks within the town boundaries. The property owner's letter to council has been attached to this report. Preliminary research by staff revealed that domestic duck breeds are slightly different than the wild ducks. The actual domestic ducks have lost their ability to fly. Their feathers are typically not long enough for flight, and their muscles aren't designed for it either. And some breeds are far too heavy for flight. Staff research other municipalities in their animal control bylaws. In Osoyoos, all forms of poultry and birds are prohibited with the exception of budgies, cockatiel, finch, and chickens. In Vernon, poultry is prohibited, which is defined as any domestic bird, rooster, turkey, geese, and duck, with the exception of hens. In Peachland, poultry is prohibited in urban zones, which is any domestic fowl, exotic fowl, turkey, geese, or duck, with the exception of chickens. Poultry is permitted within the larger rural areas. So as we research some of the municipalities, such as Salmon Arm, often some of the larger, more rural zones, types of fowl were permitted. But for the most part, most municipalities allow chickens. Some island communities, such as Nanaimo, do allow ducks under the same guidelines as chickens. So to permit domestic ducks within the town of Oliver, amendments to sections 14 and 15 of the Animal Control Bylaw are required. At this time, staff are a bit hesitant about permitting ducks, just given the lack of knowledge of impacts on the urban environment, and also because they're not permitted by any of the nearby municipalities. Further research would need to be taken. If council recommends that domestic ducks be permitted, guidelines should be put in place, such as placing a maximum number based on the size of the property, and also requiring that the coop be located a minimum of 10 feet from neighboring properties. That's the information I have. Thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you, Director. Council, any discussion? Councilman?
I have a few questions. If we were to proceed with this, would we limit to specific breeds and types, and would we have to train a bylaw officer on how to identify them? Because once you say ducks, it's wide open. The other part would be, I noticed in the letter that they refer to a rooster across the street. Have we had bylaw look into that? Would be the second question. And I guess my third point would be the thin edge of the wedge. If we receive a request for emus and ostriches in town because they have larger eggs and they're quiet, would we be considering that?
Thank you, Your Worship. I have quite a few questions. We have to go through again. We'd look at domestic ducks. And yeah, truthfully, that's why we're a bit hesitant about it. I don't know a lot about ducks, and I don't think our new bylaw officer knows a lot about ducks, so we have to research them more. And but the idea would be to allow domestic ducks. I don't know personally how much different they look than non-domestic ducks, but yeah, I don't know much more to add on that question. The second one would be the rooster question. No bylaw has not looked into that. I can definitely have bylaw look into it, but I assume it's the property across the way, which is in the Forbes Marsh area, so it's likely an agricultural property, which then would allow those types of uses, but I'll definitely put that on the radar to look at. And Councillor Madison, I'm not sure, you had 3 questions, I think I only got to 2 of them.
Would you be coming before us again if we had emus and ostriches on the agenda, because they're quiet as well?
Yeah, I guess we would be coming for you. At this point, it was the property owner has requested it, so I should be clear that it was a bylaw issue. So the property owner has prepared a letter to council, and so we brought it before council just to let council know what the required amendments would be. But at this time, there's no amendments proposed. We want a direction from council.
Okay, and I just not for yourself, and I know it's not in the report, but it was brought to our attention as well, and the general public should know that this all came about as the result of a complaint regarding the ducks that are currently on the property.
That's correct.
Thank you.
Councillor Miller?
Yeah, thank you. I guess I also don't know a lot about ducks. I don't know a lot about chickens. I don't know any animals. But if we take at face value what was provided to us in the letter from the constituent, it sounds like ducks are less bothersome than chickens would be. And I've got neighbors on all sides of me and behind me that have chickens in their yards, and they're not really offending anyone too much at any time of the day. So I wonder, recognizing that staff is also a bit uncomfortable with moving forward, allowing ducks until there is a little bit more information available. I wonder if it wouldn't be possible to give this family like a temporary use permit of sorts, to allow them to keep their ducks that they've already invested in while we work through the issues of what allowing ducks might look like in our community. I don't know if that's possible or not, so that's a question that didn't really sound like a question.
Director, answer the question.
Thank you, Worship. If we're working through a bylaw amendment process to allow ducks, and council is considering it and has directed staff to look into it, then we wouldn't be enforcing it during this time.
Okay.
Councillor Schwarzenberg.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I seem to recall, I'm sure I was on council when we did the urban chickens, that we allowed urban hens, and I think there was more than one people that were clamoring for that. I understand that ducks may be a good thing, but I think if we're just having one request, I'd be in favor of sending it back to staff for additional information, because they're unsure of what the difference is, and I'm not sure either. So I think we need a little bit more information, or staff to be a little more comfortable with ducks, rather than change the bylaw for one ask from one resident.
Thank you, Councillor Schwarzenberger. Just one moment, Councillor Adams. I just had a couple of comments myself. I own chickens, and after reading the letter, I think I wish I'd had ducks instead. It sounds like a better fit for a backyard. And I think, if we were to have a bylaw similar to what we have for chickens, and probably keeping in consideration too, because I was reading about you can combine your chickens and ducks, so, there should be a total number of, together, that sort of thing. But I think that applying the same
Again, I would like to remind council, I don't think we've received any complaints about chickens, but this was driven by a complaint, which means that there's a problem with ducks and neighbors. We haven't had a problem with chickens and neighbors. I would caution council that this is complaint driven. Someone said ducks are a problem, and council needs to bear that in mind.
Thank you, Councillor Thomas. Just a question for the Director of Development Services. Do you know, on average, how many complaints we get about dogs?
No, I wouldn't know that, sorry.
Do we get
Without
complaints
looking
about
into it.
dogs, though?
Yeah, for sure, noise, barking dogs would be the biggest complaint.
Thank you. Councillor Thomas?
Well, and I was just going to add to that, that I don't, unless Councillor Mattis has information that I don't have, which is possible, we don't know what the complaint was about, so it could just be a complaint that my neighbors have ducks, and I know you're not supposed to have ducks in town. That is a complaint, and we don't know what the complaint actually said. If us moving forward in some way, even just looking for more information so that we all end up at a more comfortable place, so that when we make a decision one way or the other, we have all of the information. If that means that the family in the meantime gets to keep their ducks that they have invested in and have on their property, then I would be happy to, I don't know if I'd be moving then recommendation number 3, that council look to staff for additional information.
Thank you, Councillor Benjamin. And a second?
Sorry, was that
That was 3.
3
More
as written?
information.
Well, I probably spoke before I read 3 completely, so that's why I hesitated when I said it. But yeah, I don't know if it could be a little bit lengthier, but basically, yes, that we'll be looking for more information, because we want to get to a place where we're all comfortable that we're making the best decision for the community.
I'll second that motion.
Councillor Schwarzenberger. Any further discussion? I will ask the Director, do you know what the nature of the complaint was?
All I know is that it was regarding ducks. I don't know the details. Thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Schwarzenberger?
Well, one more thing. If the complaint was about ducks because they were making too much noise or something, would that not be a noise complaint that would be the same as if chickens were if you had chickens making too much noise and there was a noise complaint, just because chickens are allowed, dogs are allowed too, but they're not allowed to bark. So, or not allowed to bark excessively. So if it was the ducks were making too much noise, that's a noise complaint, as opposed to a complaint about the fact that there are ducks there and the bylaw doesn't allow ducks. Long-winded, I know, but.
Yeah, sorry, I don't know where the question was there, but
Yeah, I wish I could find one.
Good stuff.
Maybe it was just a comment.
yeah.
No further discussion, all in favor? Opposed? Motion's carried. Item I1, correspondence, July 27th correspondence report, and I will refer to the corporate officer.
Thank you, Your Worship. Slid over, I'm worried that the CEO's gonna come right up the stage here. Thank you. There's no items requiring council action this afternoon. No items under reply sent under existing policies. There's one item, there's 3 policies under for information only from the Liquor Cannabis Regulation Branch. So that the correspondence listed in item I2 and the weekly mail correspondence be received.
Thank you, corporate officer. Can I get a motion for receipt?
So moved.
Councillor Schwarzenberger, second. Councillor Ventimilla. Any discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Council reports. We'll start with J2, Councillor Schwarzenberger.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Kind of a light couple of weeks for me. On Wednesday, July 22nd, I attended the unveiling of the plaque to commemorate the 100-year anniversary of the irrigation canal. That was done at Fairview Park, and it was attended by most of council. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Schwarzenberger. Councillor Mattis.
Thank you, Worship. On the 17th, I attended a Regional Library Finance Committee meeting, and on the 22nd, the ditch unveil, plaque unveil.
Thank you, Councillor Mattis. Councillor Ventimiglia.
Yeah, thank you. I continue along the theme of light couple of weeks. I had regional district board meetings on Thursday the 16th. A couple of SILGO workshops, online workshops over the last couple of weeks, the ditch unveiling on the 22nd, and today's meetings. I also wanted to mention real quickly that I hope I remember what it's called, but we, along with another council in BC, which I can't remember where they are, received a little bit of a shout out last week on Radio West, the CBC afternoon show. They always do the community corner section once, I think it's once a week. And so they were talking about communities who have handled this change really well, as far as taking everything online as fast as possible and remaining as accessible as possible to our communities. So I just wanted to thank the staff for making that happen so well.
Awesome. Thank you, Councillor Ventimiglia, and I realize we have greater reports. I'm frantically going through my calendar here. Light for me as well. On the 20th, I did one of the SILGA webinars on the theme of UNDRIP. 21st was a strategic budgeting with Christina Fenty, also a SILGA webinar. 22nd was the ditch unveiling and today's meetings. Item K, upcoming meetings. August 10th is canceled. August 24th, 2020 regular open council. Acting mayor scheduled July and August is myself. Item L, public question period. Opportunity for the audience to ask any questions regarding matters discussed during the current meeting. I would